So yesterday, this is just an improv too. I wanted to get it off my chest and just to discuss with you guys a little bit of something profound I was thinking about. Now we always discuss, how our past makes us who we are today, right? So I was talking to my uncle yesterday, and because I'm in the middle of writing a massive book, right? Let me show you. So here's some of it, right? Um, and I was explaining, I was like, people, like, if you just look at me right now and you look at for me having the ability to sit down and do all this and lock myself in this mini room right here, right, where there's nothing but books and you see the doors even closed, right? I have my bathroom. If you think about it, I have a pretty large house, but the ability for me to sit in this small room and focus and take all distractions out, it's a combination of past events, right? So I was funny because would have never thought about this if it just didn't line up exactly perfectly how it was. I'm 37 now. If you think back, what was I doing 10 years ago? I was going to Harvard. So the only way that I was able to do this, right, what I'm doing right now, write these books, is what I was doing 10 years ago, going to Harvard, studying, figuring out how to have the discipline and be able to do something that's really hard, because Harvard, they expect you to be able to read a book a day and write an essay on it, and that's just one subject. Then you got to read another book a day for another subject. You get the point. They overload you with the massive amounts of work you need to do. But then if you think again, what was I doing 10 years before that, before Harvard? And then you look, and I was in Mexico. But what was I doing mentally, educationally? Graduating high school in 2.5 years, right? And then if you think, like, okay, so we'll talk about that, because I just now thought about 10 years before that. So you think, okay, graduating when I was in Mexico, which would be 20 years now, they used to sit us down, and for school, it was mandatory 4 hours a day for 4 days. We had to sit in silence and do work. So for majority of people, they studied, but they didn't accomplish what I was able to accomplish. When they sat me down and told me I had absolutely nothing else to do, I fully indulged in reading the book and filling out the paperwork. That's how I graduated high school in 2.5 years, right? That wouldn't have been possible if 10 years before, right? My mom and dad and everybody, it was about this time, the influence, I went, around this time, I went to the Biltmore House for the first time. And in the Biltmore House, if you've ever seen the movie Richie Rich, it's the big mansion, or Google it. They have a massive library. I remember telling my friend, I bet you one of these books in here told them how to make all this money. Now, at the time, I didn't realize that it was a combination of everything that they got that wealthy. But in my mind, my young mind, it was just one particular book. Like, it was the secret, right? It was the secret just in one book. And around that same time, a friend of mine, we wanted to write our own book, right? So let's go 7. It might have been 8, 6, whatever. It was before my parents died, so I know it was before 10. We were writing a book and being influenced by the Biltmore House's library. 10 years later, we're able to read the books and graduate high school faster than normal. 10 years after that, we're at Harvard, and Harvard, I mean, they expect a lot out of you. And now 10 years after that, I'm writing books. So it's a cycle, it's a process. Nothing happens overnight, right? Nothing. So don't think that your goals or your aspirations are going to come. You don't I had no idea when I was first writing my first little book when I was with my friend and going to the Biltmore house that 30 years later it would be affecting what I'm doing, right? I did not think when I was 17 that 20 years later the skills that I was learning when I was 17 would be useful when I was 37. Same when I was 27 to 37. I would have never thought that that's what it is, but what we do to now affects 10 years from now. So if whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It could be learning a new language. It could be starting a family. It could be getting in shape. It could be becoming financially responsible. Whatever choice that you make today, right, is going to directly affect the life you're living in 10 years. So if you're making shit decisions now, you're going to feel those effects in 10 years. Because it's a gradual thing. It's just like, okay, I'm working out every day. I've got the little class, FYM Fitness. If you would have asked me for the first 6 weeks, do I see a change? I would have literally told you no, not even a little bit. But then now, I think, we're 8 weeks in, I see a tiny itty bitty change. Now, for someone looking on the outside in, they might be like, oh yeah, you know, you slimmed down a little bit. And I can notice I'm breathing better. But in 10 years, what I'm doing to myself right now is going to have a massive effect 10 years from now. Does that make sense? So if I decided not to do this and not to transform my health at 37, at 47, everything that was starting to crumble in my body that I don't even know about would be maximized, and then it would become problems. But I'm like, I was starting to get a little overweight, starting to huff and puff a little bit. I said something has to change now. So 10 years from now, I'll be in a better health situation. Does that make sense? Now, I don't want to talk much more because that's was the basis of everything. I just thought it was amazing and it was cool because I started thinking about the books and where did it come from. And then 10-year cycles, you can trace it all the way back to basically 7 years old. So if you think about what you're doing, think back 10 years, what were you doing 10 years ago? Then think back what were you doing 10 years before that? And think back what were you doing 10 years before that? Now, you might not be that long. You might not be that old, so you might not be able to go that far. But I can guarantee if you think back about what you're doing right now, it was sparked interest 10 years prior. Then if you really dig deep, it probably sparked interest even 10 years before that, depending on how old you are, right? It's all cycles. Now, I could go even deeper and look maybe 5 years ago, I was doing something different. I don't know. But I was looking at the 10-year. And if the 10-year worked for me, it could be a different cycle for you. I'm not sure. Me and you are different. But just kind of look back and see. And you'll be surprised. And then that can help you realize that what you're doing today is going to affect however long your cycle is.